They were cool, they were brown, they weren't fat, they weren't ravenous, they weren't predisposed to disease. So just by changing the influence of that genes in that mom changed the influence, it changed the expression of the genes in that offspring. Okay, does that sound wild? So it turns out that if you change, that there's a control above the genes. Now, Menelaus Kellis, it's the Epigenome project. So what can control the genes? So if the genes aren't your destiny, they're not your future, and you can control them, what kind of effects can you have, or what kind of things can influence these genes? He says about 150 billion genome sequencing, so that there's a lot of things that can influence. So now, and this was Royal Society, sponsored by a drug company, GlaxoSmithKline. Mismanagement or disorganized epigenomes lead to disease. Epigenomes, that's control above the genes. Epigenome manipulation have a therapeutic value in diverse human disorders. Really, so what kind of things can alter? So if you have 1,000 generations of intelligence, of genetic makeup, and you're getting these things passed on through people that have survived, okay? So what kind of things can alter that genetic expression? Medications, it turns out. This can alter permanent changes in the epigenome. Holy moly. So we're talking that your body can express genes or express proteins that will fight cancer, and you can express proteins that will cause cancer. And these things can alter that expression. Now, this is a hard thing to come up with, because since most of the advertisement and television stations are pretty much owned by the pharmaceutical industry, you're not going to find out that, oh my God, cholesterol-lowering drugs, antidepressants, blood pressure, methotrexate, failed chemotherapy drug, anti-inflammatories, anesthetics, oral contraceptives, antibiotics can alter your gene expression, can control your genes. What would that lead to? Well, it could lead to heart disease, cancer. Oh my gosh, this looks like those 12 causes of disease that we saw, the 12 leading causes of death in America, doesn't it? Bipolar disorder, schizophrenia. So does that mean that you can express those genes and suppress them? So let's find out. Antibiotics weaken the immune system. Antibiotics induce changes, host metabolic, inhibit drug efficacy, and alter immune system function. Antibiotic treatment impairs immune system by inhibiting respiratory activity of immune system cells. Wow, so antibiotics can alter your expression. Steroids weaken your immune system. Last week when we talked about anxiety and stress, we knew steroids, and these are prescribed from a rash to asthma, can lead to mental disorders. Acetaminophen, aspirin, antipyretics weaken your immune system. A double-blind placebo-controlled trial studied the effects of over-the-counter antipyretics medications on viral shedding and immune system response and clinical status in the common cold. I'm sorry, you guys are really, really young. There hasn't been a common cold in 2.5 years. I'll show you some of the data on it. We can look up and discuss it later. No. Yeah, it's the Voldemort virus now. Okay, now what's interesting, they talk about viral shedding. Now, why? Now, think of this. Your response to a pathogen, to a common cold, to a virus, you develop a what? A fever, because viruses, funguses, and bacteria die at a higher temperature. For every 1 degree increase in temperature, the speed of your immune system doubles. So a fever is a good response. So it turns out that altering your immune system response is not good. No, don't say duh. Okay. Immune over inability, the spontaneous regression of cancer. Wait a second. Didn't we just say that your body can produce a protein that causes cancer and produce a protein that reverses cancer? Think of this. The spontaneous healing of cancer is a phenomenon that's been observed for hundreds and thousands of years, having been the subject of many controversies, is now accepted as an indisputable fact. When a review of past reports demonstrates that regression is usually associated with acute infections, fever, and immunostimulation. Wow, so does that mean that when I get a patient that says, I have cancer, and I say, okay, where is it? you know, and I'll denote whether it's right side of the chest, left side of the chest, pancreatus, intestinal tract, or where, because that's got to be a weakened immune system. Then I'll ask them, how would you like to handle this? Okay, do you want to strengthen your immune system, okay, and help your body eliminate it, or do the cut, burn, and poison? You know, which is the common. Now, it's interesting. What do they say? Regression is usually associated with acute infections. So does that mean that our immune system is stimulated every time we get an infection, so that we shouldn't be afraid of these diseases and viruses, that we should just work on strengthening the immune system the way we're designed? Wow, that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Spontaneous regression of cancers. Now, this is 2011. The word spontaneous implies without apparent cause, and regression is defined as a decrease in size of the tumor or in the extent of the cancer in the body, according to the National Cancer Institute. Spontaneous regression of cancer is not a rare occurrence as thought to be. In an average month in 2002, medical journals published more than 4 articles on the subject. Let's look at another book, Dr. Kelly Turner, Radical Remission. Now, think of this, radical remission. That means that you're diagnosed with an abnormal cell growth. And because there's nothing spontaneous about these unusual cures, most patients are actively doing something to facilitate the healing. If the patients are actively doing something to facilitate the healing, remember, what happened? You formed a protein that caused cancer. Okay, cancer doesn't come from some mythical demon spirit that's attacking you. Okay, your body forms this based on some environmental stimulus. These people are reversing cancer by doing another environmental stimulus. Okay, am I going too fast? Okay, no. Okay, let's look at the 9 factors that they did. So how do you express genes? How do you suppress genes? You do it radically changing your diet. That makes sense because there's a lot of carcinogens that we can eat. Taking control of your health. Gee, I thought abdicating authority over my health, going up to a doctor and saying, please check me to make sure I'm healthy. Is my blood pressure okay? I don't know, I'm scared of the white jacket. Okay, oh, you think my blood pressure should be lower. I should take a cholesterol and a diuretic and a beta blocker. Oh my God, isn't that the stuff I just read that causes epigenetic changes? Please, doctor, help me. My pharmaceutical trained pill pushing Pez dispenser. Okay, no, that's foolishness. What other things? Follow your intuition. What do I tell my patients? The best doctor is inside of you. Okay, using herbs and supplements, obviously, because that's going to stimulate your immune system, releasing suppressed emotions. Physical, chemical, emotional stress. Have you ever heard me say that? Yes, because all are equally as important. You can address the physical without addressing the emotional. You are not going to get better. If you address the chemical without addressing the physical or the emotional, you're not going to get better. Increasing positive emotions. I would change that, okay? Embracing social support, deepening your spiritual connection, absolutely. Having strong reasons for living, wanting to be here. My gosh, these are the factors to alter genetic control. It alters control of the proteins you're expressing. Do you want to say it with me? Wow, that's cool. We just changed our attitude, our physiology, and it works. Epigenetic mechanisms that underpin metabolic and cardiovascular disease. Wait a second, that was the leading cause of death, those 12 causes of death. Okay, so cardiovascular disease? Now, these considerations point to epigenetic processes as a key mechanism that underpins the development origins of chronic non-communicable diseases. Development plasticity enables an organism to respond to environmental cues and to adjust its phenotype development to match its environment. Amazing. So your stimulus that you're exposed to, so if you're exposed to the gym every day, fantastic, you're going to have certain genetics expressed. If you're exposed to the office every day, if you're exposed to the donut machine every day. Do they have donut machines? I don't know, it's been a while since I've been in school, okay? But if you're exposed to that is an environmental stimulus. That is an environmental stimulus. Mismatch between early and mature environments may result in an inappropriate pattern of epigenetic changes in gene expression that increase subsequent susceptibility to metabolic and cardiovascular diseases. Wow! You can eat and think yourself healthy or eat and think yourself sick. Are those two major factors? They are. In neurologic diseases, so that means that again, when you have a relative that has Parkinson's, has Alzheimer's, has Huntington's disease, multiple sclerosis, Lou Gehrig's disease, why did they express those genes? Why did they suppress the health genes? What environmental stimulus did they have? Do you know what I mean? So it requires, this is why 3 weeks ago I talked about the detective doctor. So he's looking at why you develop this. Epigenetics in its role in diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and we're looking at over half of our population with this. Increasing evidence suggests epigenetic factors might regulate this complex interplay between genes and the environment and affect human diseases such as diabetes and its complications. It can't be this simple that your body is creating this based on the environment. The incidence of diabetes is growing rapidly. Also, the cost of treating the resulting complications. No kidding. Anybody that's in here, you probably don't remember that we used to call it childhood onset and adult onset. Okay? Because adult onset required years of poisoning in order to develop what we now currently call type 2 diabetes. Because one is you don't have enough insulin. That's type 1. It means an autoimmune condition that your pancreas has been damaged or some type of damage to that organ system so you can't produce enough insulin. The other one is you're producing plenty of insulin, but you have so much sugar that the cells, or much energy in the blood, that the job of insulin is to get that energy out of the blood into the cells. The cells are full. So they call it insulin resistant or type 2 diabetes. So it's literally a diet and stress problem. Now, are we exposed? If we know that all those medications I said have an epigenetic control, that they control your gene expression, do you think neurotoxin, a mineral chelator, and a patented antibiotic, which is used in almost every commercially produced grain product, the glyphosate, that's huge. We know that it's found, and that other genetically modified organisms, such as the Bt corn, which I know you're thinking that why not develop a corn plant that has an insecticide as a pollen that destroys the digestive tract of an insect? What could possibly go wrong? Because we're only going to feed it to cows. Yes, you're right. People eat cows, okay? So now it's found in the umbilical cords of children. So it survived the cow's digestion, survived the cooking process, the mom's digestion, and now it's in our kids. Okay, anybody remember thalidomide? Okay, we're going to see a lot of that. Autoimmune conditions. Again, this is the Journal of Autoimmunity. Please, great God, what is it, the Ministry of Truth? Yeah, I forgot to take this one out. But autoimmune triggers. So it turns out that if you're going to express a human papillomavirus infection with a shot, and multiple sclerosis is associated with that, Guillain-Barré, a host of autoimmune diseases. And again, these things are expressed, the genetic expression. Now, we all have an automatic nervous system in two parts. One part is activated under physical, chemical, emotional stress, and we need that. That's what I need when we get up for exercise, and when the boat is heeling over and you're scared, the water's coming in. You need that sympathetic dominant, okay? When you're speaking before a large group, you need that sympathetic dominant. Okay, the parasympathetic is the rest, digest, and repair. So our health is based on a balance of those autonomic nervous system. Now, this nervous system is literally located, the parasympathetics, in the neck and in the pelvis area. The sympathetics in the rib cage area. So doesn't that seem odd that if you go to a doctor and they diagnose you with high blood sugar, high blood pressure, cholesterol issues, bowel issues, and they're not going to look for your body adapting correctly based on the stress? I mean, Yeah, you got inflammatory bowel disorder because you're in a chronic state of stress. So let's address those stressors. No, you're not going to hear that because there's not critical thinking, obviously. 6 out of 10, and this is the health that your government and your pharmaceutical industry and your TV and the food and everything is expressing in our population. 60% of our population is expressing a chronic illness or disease, such as heart disease, cancer, COPD, strokes, and Alzheimer's. 60%. 40% have more than one, have a couple of them. So is this bad luck, bad genes, or horrific environmental stimuli? Is it complete lack of education that people are not addressing this? Do you understand? So when somebody says, oh, you have the BRCA gene, that means cancer runs in your family. Okay, well, I can name 5 relatives that have the same gene that don't express it. So can you tell me, doctor, what I can do to express health instead of expressing disease? Here's what you can do. The blue zones, okay, we're not reinventing the wheel here. Although we should sure as hell reinvent our government and our medical institution, okay? But let's look at people that live over 100 consistently. Does that make sense? Makes sense to me. Okay, so what are the blue zones? Now these are, I mean, there's a lot more than the 6 blue zones that they picked, but there's areas around the world where people consistently live over 100. You know people that live over 100. Your great-grandparents probably lived to over 100 if they avoided the war. Okay, moderate, regular physical activity. That means you move every day, every day. A buddy of mine's got a 98-year-old aunt in Greece, and she carries a bucket of water up the hill every day. That's how she got to 98, okay? Life purpose. You got a reason to get out of bed. What is that? That's emotional stability. This is having a reason. He is happiest who has found his place to serve mankind. That's Albert Schweitzer. Okay, so you got a reason to get up. Stress reduction. It's not stress reduction, it's stress handling effectively, and there's only 3 of them. It's physical, chemical, and emotional stress. You deal with those effectively. Moderate calorie intake, so you're not taking in excessive calories, which turn into triglycerides, which thicken up the blood, which can damage the arteries. These are people that are not eating packaged foods. 20% of them still smoke, but 20% of them grow their own tobacco. Okay, so plant-based diet. Plant-based diet. I got so many people, animals are good for you. Plant-based means based in plants. Okay, you can eat animals. There's no vegan cultures on the planet, but there are vegetarian cultures. But they'll get animal protein from insects, from dairy, from a bunch of things. But for God's sake, healthy animals. It's good for you. Moderate alcohol intake. There's one group in there that are teetotalers. The rest have a little bit of alcohol. Moderate doesn't mean just 1 bottle of wine a day. Heck, and where is it? I think it's Sicily. Sicily, they drink 7 liters of red wine a month. Damn, I couldn't do that. You know, and I got Northern European heritage. Okay, engage in spirituality or religion. So you think about something beyond you. Engage in family life. You get a connection. So engage in social life. So all of these things you can see during this, God, I almost said pandemic. Okay, you can see during the last 2.5 years that none of this stuff was implemented. Okay, none of this. I mean, in fact, the opposite was. So when we put up to maximize your life on this planet, you can't really say reverse disease because you're really creating it based on your perception of the environment and your genetic expression. You need healthy nerve supply. If you're in a chronic stress state, you're not going to live. You're not going to produce healthy proteins. You need to get it checked. You need healthy exercise. Why? Just because the blue zone people do it? No, because you move every joint. If you move a body and you strain a muscle, and that's called stress, you get healthier. Proper nutrition. This means that man make it, you don't need it. Okay, you eat like your great-great-grandparents did. Sufficient rest. How many people with a chronic illness or disease wake up and say, God, I slept good? None. None. Sleep is when your body regenerates. Okay, and prayer and meditation, we know this is like so important. You get a connection, but when you're praying, the body is more energy than matter. We can measure energy on the dark field microscopy. It's a trip. And this is why, because it's stuff we don't understand yet. But when you get an arrogant and ignorant doctor that says, well, this is what science says. Okay, great. You know, let's look at what science is going to say in another 50 years. Because 50 years ago, you guys were friggin' idiots. Okay, what do you think they're going to say 50 years from now? That mask looks so dorky. Okay, so we take our world back. We take our world back by taking charge of your own health and your own genetic expression. Does that make sense? Now, we're going to get into something dangerous now. Dangerous because it's information. We used to live in a country that valued freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of expression. That is no longer the case, okay? Now, while they're switching, I want you to go to LifeSite News, and this is Archbishop Carlos Maria Vingano, okay? An absolute brilliant